If you go anywhere in this country and you say the name Donald Trump, you will get one of two reactions from people. Either you're going to get a reaction of love and affection and respect, or you're going to get a reaction of absolute virulent hatred. And for those that hate Donald Trump, that's something that a lot of us have not been able to figure out over the years. Just why is it that some people hate Donald Trump the way that they do? You would think that a politician whose stated goal is to make America great again and make sure that America is first in all good things would be a goal that all Americans, regardless of party or persuasion politically or whatever, could come together around. Yet that's not always the case. So why do people hate Donald Trump the way they do? Hang on a second. Let's refine that question down just a little bit. Let me restate that. What is it about Donald Trump that makes the official uniparty establishment in Washington, D.C. hate him so much? I came across a great article today that when we go through this, I think you're going to begin to understand why it is that people in both political parties, in large parts of the bureaucracy, in and out officially of the government in Washington, D.C., why it is all those people hate Donald Trump the way they do. Hang on. We're going to get into all that here in just one second. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. So just why is it that official Washington, D.C. hates Donald Trump the way that they do? I came across an article today that absolutely ties everything together beautifully. And I think once you go through it with me, you're going to begin to understand just why it is that people in both political parties, in the bureaucracy, in and out of official Washington, D.C., hate this man the way they do. I want to introduce you first to the author of the article. Reading from his bio, Dr. Christian Parenti is professor of economics at John Jay College, City University of New York. His undergraduate and graduate teaching and research focus on American economic history, environmental history, and the history of capitalism, climate change and sustainable energy, as well as war, policing, and political violence. His books include Radical Hamilton, Economic Lessons from a Misunderstood Founder, Tropic of Chaos, Climate Change and the New Geography of Violence, The Freedom, Shadows and Hallucinations in Occupied Iraq, The Soft Cage, Surveillance from Slavery to the War on Terror, and Lockdown America, Police and Prisons in the Age of Crisis. Previously as a journalist, he reported extensively from Afghanistan, Iraq, and various parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America for The Nation, Fortune, the London Review Books, the New York Times, and other publications. Now, as you might gather from reading all that with me, this man is by no means a right-winger. And I don't say that as a criticism of him. I just want to say that up front and let everybody understand. When you go through this article and you understand his intellectual background, to me, I think that makes the impact of what he has to say even more relevant. Because this isn't coming from the right. This is coming from the left. And when you see this article, I think you're really going to understand what I'm saying, and it will drive the point home. Now, having set the table, let's get to it. This article is published in a magazine called Compact. There's the version of it that I found is online, and this was published April the 7th. Title: Trump's real crime is opposing empire. And we start the article, first paragraph. Within 24 hours of former President Donald Trump's arrest on 34 overhyped felony counts related to hush money payments made to conceal an extramarital dalliance, his re-election campaign raised $4 million, and he widened his lead in the Republican primaries to almost 30 percentage points. Yet a CNN poll also found that 60% of Americans approve of the indictment. These numbers are probably less important than they might appear. The trial will likely mobilize the base in both parties and pull swing voters in both directions for a net effect of 0. Even so, the indictment does real harm to the American body politic. It has already set off another Trump-centric media feeding frenzy at the expense of issues far more serious than the former executive's half-remembered infidelities, and it creates a dangerous precedent, further politicizing the judiciary and inviting escalation. Above all, it is a reminder that Trump has been investigated, impeached, and indicted not because of the crimes of which he is accused, but because he has dared to oppose the imperial foreign policy favored by elites. So Parenti gets right to it. It's not the tweets. It was never the tweets. It's not his supposed boorish behavior. Wish to be perfectly honest, Trump can absolutely engage in it. It wasn't anything other than he went against the idea of how America ought to govern itself in the world. Now, Parenti has just set everything up. We're going to get a little bit further into this article, and this is when it really starts getting good. A little further in, the Trump arrest is a sheer act of desperation, based on a tortured legal theory that seeks to turn mislabeled payments into federal election meddling. It should force us to ask once again, why do they hate Trump so much? Alvin Bragg's prosecution is part and parcel of a multi-front war waged against the former president by the entire U.S. establishment and its institutions. While in the White House, Trump gave the ruling class massive tax cuts and sweeping deregulation. So what's the beef? His foreign policy heresies. To the frustration of those who benefit from it, Trump worked to unwind the American empire. Indeed, he has done more to restrain the U.S. imperium than any politician in 75 years. And if you stop and think of the timeline on that, that goes all the way back to the days of Dwight Eisenhower in the 1950s. Absolutely amazing statement and so well written. Truly. Go a little further. Within a few months of his arrival in the Oval Office, it became clear that Trump's seemingly preposterous rhetoric about ending America's forever wars wasn't a joke. Yes, he ordered a few missile and drone strikes here and there, but unlike all of his predecessors, he didn't start any new wars. Indeed, he wound down numerous small wars and negotiated a peace settlement in Afghanistan, even if the dirty work of the final withdrawal fell to President Biden. And that is a completely valid point. There's a lot of things you can say about Donald Trump, but one thing's for sure. Nobody, and I mean nobody, can name a new foreign conflict that he got the United States involved in where we were sending troops and munitions to a different part of the world. Not one. I dare somebody to do it. That would be a fascinating conversation to have. Now, we go a little bit further into the article, and I really want to set this up because this is good. This is really good. Here we are. Trump's assault on the foreign policy status quo is all the more remarkable for the near total lack of literature discussing it. Here is a brief sketch of what he did, if you're wondering what it was. Trump ordered the withdrawal of 1/3 of all U.S. military personnel from Germany, which is a central fulcrum for the entire American imperial project. The 40 German military installations housing U.S. troops support American military operations in 104 countries and contain an estimated 150 nuclear weapons. Among other projects, the Military Africa Command is headquartered in Germany. Trump also ordered the Pentagon to explore withdrawing troops from South Korea, which plays a similar role to that of Germany as a central high-tech node of U.S. power projection throughout the entire East Asian region. Going a little further down into that article, and then we're going to come out for a second for a bit of brief discussion. Trump likewise drew down the U.S. military role in Syria, even as the foreign policy establishment urged him to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. He withdrew troops from Iraq and Afghanistan, refused to escalate in Libya, and withdrew almost all U.S. special forces from Somalia. In the rest of Africa, he mused about closing all U.S. embassies, important nodes of CIA operations. Wow. Absolutely amazing. And like Parenti says, does anybody ever talk about this? Did anybody even realize it? There were things he pointed out in this article I had no idea was going on, and I'd like to think I'm as well versed on these subjects as anybody. This is what Donald Trump was trying to do. Get us out of all these troubles. And what did he get for his troubles? Oh, let's see. Investigations, impeachments, trials in the Senate. Not once, but twice. And on and on and on his troubles go. So let's get back into the article because there are some other really interesting points to get to. On the economic and diplomatic front, Trump pursued similar anti-imperialist policies. He repeatedly talked about withdrawing from NATO entirely. All things considered, that wouldn't have been a bad idea. He insulted European leaders to their faces while he became buddies with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He pulled the plug on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was to have been the mother of all free trade agreements and the centerpiece of the pivot to Asia sought by Barack Obama. He renegotiated NAFTA after first having attempted to scrap the whole thing unilaterally. At every turn, Trump's foreign policy efforts were sabotaged by his staff. On 2 occasions, a top economic advisor stole documents while they were awaiting a presidential signature. One would have destroyed a trade agreement with South Korea, and the other would have simply killed NAFTA. When Trump ordered the withdrawal of troops from Germany and South Korea, his defense secretary, Mark Esper, worked diligently to redeploy many of these personnel within the same theater. Such internal opposition limited Trump's moves and helped the press play down the importance of Trump's anti-imperial foreign policy. And Parenti brings up a point that a lot of people forget about. Whether it was Mark Esper or one of his predecessors, General James Mad Dog Maddox, whether it was Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, H.R. McMaster, there were all kinds of people in Trump's administration. And, let's be fair, Trump put them there. He's the one that hired them. But these people went out of their way to try and sabotage Trump at every turn when it came to putting his vision of American foreign policy in place. So Parenti's bringing up a completely legitimate point here. Now, that sort of begs the question, what was driving Trump in all of this? Hang on, folks, we're going to look at that in just 1 second. So as you're reading through this article with me, and as you're thinking it over, you might be asking yourself the question, so what's driving Trump? What's making him want to upset the apple cart of foreign policy doctrine that's been established in D.C. for some 75 years? Well, Parenti takes a crack at that. Listen to this. Trump isn't an anti-imperialist in the left-wing sense. Rather, he is an instinctual America-first isolationist who seems to harbor genuine disdain for global elites and policy insiders. He has also, of course, insulted whole populations in the global south, but regardless of his deeper motives, the result was that more than any recent president, he sought to dismantle America's informal global empire. Trump is also a deeply intuitive politician, and his anti-militarist policy moves played well with his base, the flyover country, working and middle-class people who feel that they and their regions bear the brunt of the taxes, military recruitment, and deindustrialization that serve to purport the American empire. Now, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention, because here comes what I would argue is the most important paragraph in this article, and I will also say is probably one of the most damning indictments of establishment Washington that I've heard in years. As president, Trump stressed the tremendous cost of America's commitments overseas. He seemed not to grasp how lavish public spending on the American imperium translates into considerable privilege gains for the America 1%. The nation's richest citizens benefit from the informal empire not only thanks to lavish arms contracts, but also in the form of ready access to cheap labor and raw materials abroad. They are also the steady tribute payments in the form of foreign investment in America's high-end real estate markets, art scene, and financial sector, servicing the global South's sovereign debt and managing vast deposits of often ill-gotten flight capital make for lucrative business. And here is the rest of it. This cavalier disregard for establishment interest is at bottom why the national security class, as well as the political consultants, the media, and mainstream politicians, despise him. It is the real reason the Russiagate hoax had so much traction. That cartoonish fabrication was a way of telling the American public that Trump was bad for U.S. foreign policy without also explaining the truth of what U.S. foreign policy really looks like and who it really benefits. Ladies and gentlemen, why does the establishment in Washington, D.C. hate him so much? It's simple. If Trump's vision succeeds of reestablishing what foreign policy means in the world, the cash cow is dead. A system that has been set up over the decades to the benefit of a very few people is going to be completely undone. And in doing so, they will have to actually explain why it is all these interesting and cozy relationships are the way they are. How did these get set up? Who's getting the benefit? You remember back during Watergate, Deep Throat's admonition to Bob Woodward? Follow the money. If Trump wins, the establishment loses. If they lose more than just one political fight. They lose the ability to benefit themselves. It's not that Trump is bad per se. It's that Trump is bad for business. Now, not the business of American governance, mind you, but the business of the establishment enriching themselves to the detriment of the majority of citizens in the same country that they reside. As we start to wrap this up, please do me some favors as always. Number 1, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, please do so. Number 2, hit the notification bell. Number 3, share the video around. If you have friends of yours that you think would enjoy this content, please feel free to share it with them. As I often say, I'm a one-man band. I'll take all the help I can get. And also, hit the thumbs up. You'd be amazed what that would do for a new content creator like me. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.